Your colleague just said something that made your blood boil. Your face is hot. Your jaw clenched. You're mentally composing the perfect, cutting response. You're going to destroy them with your next sentence. But here's what you don't know. In exactly 90 seconds, this feeling will be gone, completely metabolized, flushed from your system, unless you choose to keep it alive. The chemical cascade creating what you're experiencing is anger, the cortisol flood, the adrenaline spike, the racing heart, the heat in your face, has a built-in expiration date. 90 seconds. That's it. The neurological response to threat naturally metabolizes in 90 seconds or less. Every second after that, that's you. You're the author of your own suffering now, hitting replay, feeding the fire, manufacturing fresh batches of outrage with nothing but your thoughts. Carl Jung spent decades studying why some people remain trapped in emotional reactivity, while others move through it like water. He discovered something that changes everything about conflict. We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Jung worked with patients who stayed angry for days, weeks, years over single events. He found they weren't experiencing the original emotion anymore. They were experiencing their story about the emotion. They'd become prisoners of their own narrative, feeding a feeling that should have naturally dissolved. There's a person in your life who never seems to break. Traffic jams, betrayals, criticism, chaos erupting all around them. And yet, nothing. They remain steady, unmoved, present. You've wondered about them. Maybe you've even envied them. What do they know that you don't? What secret gives them this immunity to the emotional warfare that leaves the rest of us wounded and reactive? Here's what makes them different. They understand something Jung discovered about human nature that most people never learn. They've learned to see the invisible architecture of emotional experience. They know where feelings come from, how long they actually last, and most importantly, how to let them pass through without being destroyed by them. Let me show you what they know. Here's what we do. Someone cuts us off in traffic. The chemicals flood our system. That's the 90 seconds. Our body is simply responding to perceived threat. Natural, automatic, survivable. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a physical threat and a social one, so it responds the same way it would if you were being chased by a predator. But then we start the story. What kind of idiot drives like that? They could have killed someone. They probably do this every day. They think they own the road. Entitled, reckless, dangerous. And now, we're not experiencing the event anymore. We're experiencing our story about the event. We've become the playwright, the director, and the prisoner of our own internal drama. We rehearse what we should have said. We imagine confrontations we'll never have. We build entire case files of evidence proving how wrong they were, how right we are. The chemicals flushed out 60 seconds ago. The threat has passed. Your body tried to return to baseline, but we keep hitting the replay button, flooding ourselves with fresh doses of outrage. We're manufacturing new batches of cortisol and adrenaline with nothing but our thoughts. We're not being made angry anymore. We're making ourselves angry. The event is over. The anger is optional. This is the first truth. Anger is a choice you keep making. Let me tell you about buttons. They really know how to push my buttons, we say, as if we're helpless, as if other people have been given instruction manuals to our emotional control panels, as if we're nothing more than elaborate remote controls, waiting for someone to press the right combination to make us react. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to hear. Those buttons only work because you installed them. Every trigger point in your adult life is a bookmark to an unhealed wound. Every disproportionate reaction is a message from your past trying to get your attention. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or buried in the unconscious. He spent decades studying what happens when we encounter people or situations that activate these buried wounds. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your coworker's sarcasm hits different than everyone else's sarcasm because it sounds exactly like your father's disappointment. It carries the same tone, the same implied judgment, the same message that you're not quite good enough. Your partner's forgetfulness doesn't just frustrate you. It resurrects every time you felt invisible, unimportant, abandoned. Every childhood birthday party where nobody showed up. Every promise that got broken. Jung worked with patients who had violent reactions to certain words, certain tones, certain gestures. When he traced these reactions back, he found childhood wounds every time. The adult trigger was just an echo of something unfinished from the past. The person who triggers you isn't creating the problem. They're revealing where you still have unintegrated shadow material. They're showing you exactly where you still have work to do. That impossible boss who makes you feel incompetent? They're not making you feel anything. They're activating a neural pathway that was carved decades ago when you learned that your worth was conditional. When you discovered that making mistakes meant losing love. When you internalized the belief that you had to be perfect to be acceptable. When you see it this way, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and start asking, "Why is this touching such a raw nerve? What old wound is this pressing on? What younger version of me is still waiting to be healed?" You stop being a victim of other people's behavior and become an archaeologist of your own emotional history. You start excavating the real source of your reactions instead of blaming the person who happened to trigger them. The triggers don't disappear, but they stop controlling you. Because once you see the button, once you understand where it came from and what it's connected to, you can disconnect it. You can choose a different response. You can finally heal what's been hurting all along. Pause here. Think about the last time you were truly triggered, when your reaction was bigger than the situation deserved. What wound was being touched? Comment below if you're brave enough to name it. Sometimes naming the wound is the first step to healing it. Anger is a bodyguard. It's the emotional equivalent of a bouncer standing at the door of a club, keeping the threat out. But here's what most people don't realize. The threat isn't other people. It's your own vulnerability, your hurt, your fear, the terrifying possibility that you might not matter as much as you thought you did, that you might be as flawed as they're suggesting, that you might actually be alone in this. Watch what happens in any conflict. Someone criticizes you, and instantly, before conscious thought, before deliberate choice, anger volunteers for duty. "I'll handle this," it says. "I'll protect us from feeling that vulnerable thing underneath." Because anger feels safer than vulnerability. Anger feels powerful. Anger feels like action, like control, like strength. Anger doesn't feel like the thing you've been running from since childhood. Raw, exposed vulnerability. Jung discovered this pattern repeatedly in his clinical work. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But most people never make that journey inward. They stay at the surface level, blaming, defending, attacking, never asking what their anger is protecting. Your partner forgets your anniversary. The anger arrives immediately, like a protective older brother showing up to a fight. "You never remember anything. I'm not a priority to you. You don't even care." But underneath that anger is a different sentence, a more honest sentence, a more vulnerable sentence. I'm terrified that I don't matter to you. When you forget important things, it feels like evidence that I'm not important. It makes me feel invisible, and that feeling is unbearable. One response creates a fight. The other creates connection. One response puts your partner on defense. The other invites them into your inner world. The person you admire for staying calm in conflicts isn't suppressing their emotions. They're not pretending they don't care. They're not made of stone. They've learned to identify the vulnerable feeling underneath the anger and speak from that place instead. They've learned that vulnerability is actually the strongest position, not the weakest. Vulnerability disarms. Anger escalates. Vulnerability creates intimacy. Anger creates distance. Vulnerability heals. Anger protects what's already wounded. Jung understood that true psychological maturity meant learning to sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of armoring against them. He called this integration, the ability to hold opposing forces, strength and vulnerability, anger and hurt, without letting one destroy the other. The next time anger shows up, before you let it take the wheel, ask yourself, what am I really protecting? What's the tender thing underneath this armor? That question changes everything. This is the second truth. Your anger is always protecting something more tender. Find that tender thing and speak from there instead. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps, wrote something that Jung himself would have recognized as profound. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Most people never find this space. They don't even know it exists. The trigger hits, and they react so fast they never knew they had a choice. It feels automatic, inevitable. Someone says something, and instantly you're defending, attacking, shutting down. Stimulus, response, cause, effect. Like a billiard ball struck by another billiard ball. Pure physics, no consciousness, no choice. But that space exists, even if it's only a microsecond long, even if you've never noticed it before. It's there, waiting to be discovered. Jung called this space consciousness, the ability to observe your own psychological processes as they unfold. He wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That choice happens in the space between trigger and reaction. Finding this space is like developing a new muscle. The first time you try, you won't even catch yourself. Until after you've already reacted. You'll replay it later. I wish I'd handled that differently. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I'd been calmer. That's progress. That's the beginning of consciousness. The next time, you catch yourself mid-reaction. You're already defensive, already escalating, already saying things you'll regret. But somewhere in the middle, you think, wait, there's another way to respond. I'm making this worse. That's more progress. You're starting to find the space, even if you can't live in it yet. Eventually, with practice, you find the space before you respond. That email arrives. The criticism lands. The disappointment strikes. And before the automatic reaction fires, before the anger bodyguard rushes in, there's a pause, a breath, a moment of conscious choice. What response would I be proud of tomorrow? What response would actually solve this problem instead of creating a bigger one? What response reflects who I want to be, not just what I'm feeling right now? That question, that single question, activates your choice point. It opens the space wide enough for you to step through. This is the third truth. You are not your automatic reactions. You are the space between trigger and response. You are the consciousness that chooses. Inside you right now is someone who's watching. Not the anxious you, not the angry you, not even the peaceful you. Something deeper, something that exists behind all of these states. Something Jung called the self, the part of you that can observe all versions of you without becoming any of them. Your teenager rolls their eyes at you. You feel the irritation rising. Your face gets hot. Your jaw tightens. Your thoughts start spinning. They're so disrespectful. After everything I do for them, they have no idea how good they have it. And then, if you've practiced, if you've developed this capacity, another voice speaks. Irritation is arising, heart rate increasing, defensive thoughts forming. The anger bodyguard is volunteering for duty. You're not suppressing the emotion. You're not pretending it's not there. You're not spiritual bypassing or gaslighting yourself. You're watching it the way a meteorologist watches a storm system, with interest, with curiosity, with professional detachment, without becoming the storm itself. This observer self is always available. It's not something you have to create or achieve. It's already there, watching right now. Jung spent his entire career helping people discover this observing consciousness, what he called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are beneath all the conditioned reactions. It's the part of you that can think, I'm having the thought that this person is incompetent, instead of simply thinking, this person is incompetent. The difference is everything. Because when you're the observer, you have options. You have flexibility. You have freedom. When you become the emotion, when you are the anger, when you are the fear, you have none of those things. You're a puppet controlled by your reactions. The person who never seems to get rattled, they're not emotionless. They're not souled or robotic. They haven't achieved some impossible level of Zen mastery. They've just learned to observe their emotions instead of being hijacked by them. They feel everything you feel. The irritation, the disappointment, the anger. They just don't let it commandeer their behavior. Jung wrote, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. The observer is what makes that choice possible. If you've ever caught yourself observing your own reaction mid-trigger, watching yourself get angry while a part of you stays calm, comment observer below. Let's see how many of us are discovering this consciousness. This is the fourth truth. You can experience any emotion without being controlled by it. You can feel it all without letting it drive the car. What if every difficult person in your life is actually a personal trainer? Not for your body, for your emotional fitness, for your capacity to remain centered when psychological warfare erupts around you. That micromanaging boss who checks your work 17 times a day, they're not torturing you. They're building your resilience muscle, your capacity to remain calm under pressure, your ability to maintain your sense of competence, even when someone else doubts you. Every time you choose not to react defensively to their checking, you're getting psychologically stronger. That passive-aggressive neighbor who leaves those notes about your parking, they're developing your boundary-setting skills, your ability to address conflict directly instead of avoiding it or escalating it. Your teenager who rolls their eyes at everything you say, they're training you to stop needing their approval, to feel like a good parent. They're teaching you the difference between your worth and their momentary teenage disdain. Jung understood this completely. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Every challenging interaction is a repetition in your emotional workout. Every trigger is an opportunity to practice choosing your response. Every difficult person is showing you exactly what you still need to master." This reframe changes everything. You stop being a victim of difficult people and become a student of emotional mastery. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" Your colleague makes that sarcastic comment that always sets you off. Before, you'd react automatically, defensive, hurt, angry, diminished. Now you think, "Interesting. They're showing me where I'm still sensitive to criticism. This is a chance to practice staying grounded when I'm challenged. This is a chance to not need their approval to feel okay about myself." The comment doesn't hurt less, at least not at first, but it no longer has power over you. It no longer determines your worth or your mood or your behavior, because you're not being persecuted. You're being trained. The universe isn't punishing you with difficult people. It's educating you. It's showing you exactly what you need to integrate next. Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming whole by integrating all the parts of yourself that difficult people activate. That person who triggers your inadequacy feelings, they're showing you where you still believe your worth is conditional. That person who makes you feel invisible, they're revealing where you still need external validation to feel real. That person who activates your rage, they're pointing to the vulnerability you're still armoring against. Every difficult person is a mirror reflecting back the unhealed parts of your psyche. Jung discovered that we don't hate people for who they are. We hate them for what they reveal about ourselves. Everything that irritates us about others, he wrote, can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So the next time someone triggers you, instead of seeing an enemy, see a teacher. Instead of feeling attacked, feel grateful. They just showed you exactly where your next growth edge is. This is the fifth truth. Difficult people are your greatest teachers in disguise. They're showing you exactly where you still have integration work to do. Here's what that person knows. The one who never seems to break. They know that 90 seconds is a choice point, not a prison sentence. They know their triggers are maps to healing, not destinations to avoid. They know anger is a messenger protecting something vulnerable, not a master to obey. They know the space between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. They know the observer within them is unshakable. They know difficult people are training them for emotional mastery, not punishing them for being alive. But most importantly, they know this fundamental truth that Jung discovered through decades of clinical work. No one can make you feel anything. They can only reveal what's already inside you. Every person who triggers you is holding up a mirror. They're showing you exactly where you're still carrying wounds, where you're still defending instead of understanding, where you're still reacting instead of responding, where you're still unconscious instead of awake. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." The moment someone triggers you, you have a choice. Look outside and blame them, or look inside and discover what's being activated. The first path keeps you trapped in unconscious reactivity forever. The second path leads to the psychological freedom Jung called individuation, becoming fully yourself, integrated, whole, no longer controlled by unconscious patterns. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. Once you understand how the mechanism works, you can never go back to complete unconscious reactivity. You might still get triggered, but you'll see it happening. You'll recognize the 90 seconds. You'll notice the story you're telling. You'll find the space. You'll observe the emotion. And then, increasingly, naturally, you'll choose your response. Remember that colleague who made your blood boil at the beginning? If they say it again tomorrow, you'll still feel the chemical cascade. The 90 seconds will still tick by. But this time, you'll know what's happening. You'll watch the anger arrive, peak, and naturally begin to fade. And you'll choose whether to feed it or let it pass. That's the difference. Not elimination of emotion. Conscious choice about what you do with it. You'll still get triggered. The difference is, you'll recognize what's happening. You'll feel the 90 seconds tick by. You'll find the space between stimulus and response. You'll observe the emotion as it arises and passes. You'll choose your response based on who you want to be, not just what you're feeling. And slowly, person by person, trigger by trigger, interaction by interaction, you'll become the calm one, the unshakable one, the one who never seems to break, the one everyone wonders about. Not because you're special, not because you're different, not because you were born with some gift the rest of us lack, because you know what they're about to learn. Jung spent his life teaching that consciousness is the only true protection against the unconscious forces that control most people's lives. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You just learned how to become that. The calm you admire in others isn't genetic. It's learned. It's practiced. It's chosen, 90 seconds at a time." Comment below. My reactions don't control me. I choose my response. Declare it. Make it real. Join the revolution of people who refuse to be hijacked by their nervous systems. Jung called this individuation. I call it freedom. Welcome to the last ones standing.